All right. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to SM Blab, a bi-weekly Blab series where we talk about all things small business technology, from WebRTC to BYOD, all kinds of fun acronyms. We hope our guest of honor brought some fun acronyms. Did you bring us some good acronyms today, Amanda? Maybe not.
I think it's TBD.
Very good.
That's a good one.
Well done.
But I'm Angela Leavitt. I'm a founder of Mojo Marketing, and we have Mike.
And I'm Mike Oeth, and I'm the founder and CEO of OnSip.
And our guest, our wonderful guest today is Amanda. How do you pronounce your last name?
Moskowitz.
Moskowitz. Okay. And founder of Stacklist. So welcome,
it's actually called Stacklist.
Stacklist. I'm sorry, Stacklist. And thank you so much for being on the show with us today.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Yeah,
pleasure to be here.
Angela, that was completely my fault because I said I was going to Slack Joe just before.
You planted the seed
sorry.
I know. You said the other word, and I slipped. I've spent a lot of time on your website, Amanda, so I know it's Stacklist. I slipped. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's okay. It's okay. I think there's definitely some. I think it could be interesting to see where a company named Stacklist would go. It sounds like a little not a positive thing, but it could be really fun.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. So,
there are tools on our site that we don't like. We try to be pretty subtle about it, and we don't come out and attack them. But there might be some way to really send out warnings to the startup community and say, "Don't use these tools. We've put them on the Slack list."
Oh my God!
There you go.
The thing is, though, Slack, the tool, is so great and people love it so much that it almost has flipped the connotation of the word Slack. So not sure.
True.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What a way to own something and turn it around. The way Slack did with that term.
Sometimes we have the notion. So we're going to start doing events at Stacklist, and we're kind of exploring the idea of calling it a series, which we might launch it with a certain series name, but we might also wait to kind of get a feel for what it should be. But sometimes it's really tempting around here to kind of own up to some of the banality of what we do, because we are talking about the infrastructure of companies. The very thing we're talking about is stuff that you kind of want to buy or sign up for, and then it kind of lives in the background and lets you do your processes and lets your company grow. But it's not exciting. It's we're what do you use for payroll? What's your file sharing tool? And so sometimes we actually have the notion to just call it the boring series, or the everything you don't want to talk about series. And so those are. We do actually think about just kind of grabbing a new word, not so much reclaiming it, but using it to kind of say, hey, yeah, this is kind of what it is. Get some attention by, using an unusual word to describe something.
And I totally feel your pain. Our customers only think about us when they're having a problem. We provide phone service, and 99.999% of the time, they never think about it. It's just there, and it just works, and that's it. It's not super fun, sexy, exciting. It's just it's the phone, and they use it. And that's always been our problem with PR and different things. We've had PR agencies at different times and doing year-long campaigns, and it's tough to fill those gaps in the middle with anything that's super exciting. It's phone service, but so now we use them strategically, we're using Angela for these blogs and for product launches and things, and that works really well. But day in, day out, we our job is just blocking, tackling, and you're just getting the stuff, just like you said, payroll and everyday little things, just getting that done. Nothing, and no superhero work required.
Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of stuff we think about, and when we think about what we want to be and the value we want to really bring to startups as we grow, is, how can we be helpful in both, making it easy for entrepreneurs to make the right decision about tools as quickly and efficiently as possible, and then letting them fade into the background. What are the things you set up and then you roll with? And, we are of the mindset that these are some of the most important decisions you will make, but that they should be a very, very, very small part of the time that you spend in the day. And so, one of the reasons we started Stacklist is because we learned, and at first it was anecdotal, just being in the startup space myself and kind of having a sense of how people were making these decisions, but then actually surveying people, and we ran a pretty scientific process about how people choose their tools. And we learned that more than 70% of the time, in spite of all the research people do, the documents they put together, comparing and contrasting the sites that they go to, they end up making their decisions by asking other founders what they use. Right. More than 70% of the time on almost any tool. And so these conversations happen at cocktail parties or at a networking event, or by someone, tweeting it out to a few of their friends, or emailing a few people they trust, or emailing people whose businesses look like theirs. So we're like, all right, what is it about the existing research online and the existing tools you have for researching these tools that's not working? And we really kind of thought it's because you don't really see the peer reviews. It's not easy for me, it's probably not easy for y'all to kind of look at any of the existing sites and say, hey, that's an entrepreneur who's been in my position. They're 10 people ahead of me. They're, their size is where I'm going to be in 6 months. We just did a raise. What HR tool are they using? Or, they're a B2C with a physical packaged good. How are they doing content marketing? So that's why we kind of brought this together and said, let's make it easy for people. This is how people are making these decisions. Let's put it in one place and make it fast and easy. And boring.
Neat. No, I just attended one of the biggest marketing conferences in the country, happened here last week, and it was really interesting to see the sessions that were packed were all about tools, right? It was top 10 tools for managing your blog, or top 9 tools for managing social media, and you're right, it's those things, they're running in the background, but they're so mission critical to what, small businesses, or even larger businesses, their infrastructure and how everything is set up. Yeah. So super critical.
Now that you mentioned those two categories specifically, we were actually taking kind of a look this morning at a sort of metric we try to keep our eyes on. And that's kind of what kind of growth and innovation and basically new tool companies or platforms that we see in certain categories. Content marketing is one of the fastest growing categories. So just a lot of new tools coming out all the time. And it's a really fragmented market so we'll hear, there isn't this WordPress is kind of the most frequent company you're going to see in that category, but you're looking at kind of the topic broadly. But there are many that just play. You just see them, so many different startups using so many different tools for content marketing. So there are some really fabulous ones out there. But I was actually going to ask you. We see the opposite with social media marketing. We are finding, and so when I heard you were going to be on this, I thought, maybe this would be interesting to ask you. We also see extremely somewhat neutral, but certainly unremarkable reviews about nearly every social media tool, to the extent where it's very difficult for us to differentiate in making a recommendation. And to clarify what I mean when I say unremarkable reviews. These founders, we talk to founders for 20 to 30 minutes. All of this information is gathered. Mike's done a Stacklist interview with us, and knows what it's like.
Yep.
And
it's fun.
Good. And we so appreciate you doing it. This stuff is invaluable to other founders. So, and in their teams. And so anyway, so social media, the reviews are just like, we use Hootsuite, or, we like, but, it's just, we don't see, now we use a social media marketing tool. We find it pretty essential for keeping Twitter up to date. But I'd really love to hear kind of what you're seeing in the social media management space. Is it just hard to innovate there? Is it hard for these companies to do an exceptional job? We just have noticed that across the board with this category.
Yeah. So I think the problem doesn't lie so much in the tools themselves. A lot of it is like the API of the social platform. And I discovered this last week because I've experienced the same frustration. And where this comes up for us is when we're doing our monthly reporting, and we're using like all these different things. And so, we're spending a lot of time like manually gathering data and things like that. And so I'm looking for like, how can I manage and measure it all in one platform? And it's, I talked to some of the tools that were there, some of those platforms that were there, and I was like, what's the deal with LinkedIn? Like, this is like one of our main platforms we use. There's like zero visibility, and they're like, oh, it's all LinkedIn's API. Go talk to them. So I went over and talked to LinkedIn, and I was just like, guys, you've got to come up with a way for people to measure their activity on their personal profile, their groups, their company. Like there's a lot of ways that people are using LinkedIn, and the only data you're spitting out is on the ads, like if you're running ads. And, whereas Facebook gives you everything you could possibly want to know, So I think that's part of the challenge, right? Is like not all of the platforms are being completely open with their APIs and able for someone to build a tool that fully integrates everything. So hopefully over time that changes, because there certainly is an opportunity, and the frustration that you express is felt across the board. So
we did notice. I think one point of differentiation that I feel like is kind of important to draw attention to, and you should certainly correct us or let me know if you have more thoughts about this. Is with tools like Buffer and Hootsuite, those I think those are generally, the price points are quite low. And then you pay extra for the reporting. And so what we found, a lot of people who come to us for recommendations, they're like, we find the reporting a little bit expensive. We don't understand the value of the reports. It actually happens at Sprout Social. And granted, we don't have like an excellent grasp of how good the kind of social posting is on Sprout Social, but I'm assuming it's on par. They package in all of the reporting into the kind of bundle that you buy, just as you opt into the platform. So yes, you are paying more at the outset, but you have exposure to more reports. So it is just it's a bundling and pricing difference versus a functionality difference. But I think it's pretty important that companies who value this from the outset go ahead and buy it. And I don't have this in front of me, but I believe it's a manageable price, something like under $200 a month.
Yeah. We've looked into Sprout Social right now. We use a lot of we use Sendable. I don't know if you're familiar with them, and Raven reports. So, but there's still things we have to do manually. I'm just looking for something that would measure everything. But anyway, so what kind of trends are you seeing in like the startup or SMB space when it comes to like some of the people that you've been interviewing? Are you seeing any? I mean,
first of all, the adoption of productivity tools is like we don't actually really ask much about productivity tools. But what we always ask people, what kind of other tools are essential? Like, what have we not asked you about? We hit about 12 or 13 core categories that we think everyone kind of deals with in the early days of their company, between 1 and 5 employees, in the seed stage, however you want to mark those early days. And so we ask about 12 or 13 specific categories. And then we always say, all right, so what's essential to your company's operations that we haven't asked you about? And so, some people kind of name more of their technical tools, which we don't tend to ask as much about. Some people, kind of talk about tools like the room booking apps, for example, because they have a physical space or they are a co-working space. So that's where this would kind of fall. The number of productivity tools that people list as critical to their lives is really incredible. So we have a ton of new productivity tools probably every month. It's actually really hard to keep up. There are just a lot of new startups playing in this space. And I think we also see a lot of startups. One trend we see is startups wanting to use other startups' tools. They'll work within their accelerator groups. They'll work within their city. We have a lot of Techstars companies that will say, yeah, we prefer to use another Techstars company. So the productivity tools. So one that's gaining a lot of popularity is X.AI. It's an NYC-based company, virtual assistants. I think people know it better as, Amy Ingram. If you're familiar with it, they are X.AI, obviously artificial intelligence, and Amy helps you schedule. Oh, it's Amy and Andrew, depending on who you want to work with. And so they kind of help you schedule meetings. So that comes up a lot. And, X.AI is growing quite quickly. Evernote still plays a really big role. A lot of the calendar management, others like Calendly is still pretty popular and doing quite well. Sunrise, things like that. Boomerang from day one has been one of the most popular tools. People consider that pretty essential. And while there have been a ton of really awesome kind of sales/productivity tools, more sales like through email, like Yesware, that kind of covers some of the functionality of Boomerang. Even like Streak, some of the CRMs we see include that functionality, but nothing has really come in and just replaced the simplicity of Boomerang. But that said, yes, productivity tools every day. So we're very interested in seeing kind of which ones are going to rise to the top over time.
Huh.
We're pretty interested in some of the spaces that have been previously occupied by giants. Accounting, HR, and when I say giants, like QuickBooks or TriNet, ADP, these spaces are going to be slower to innovate because it's going to be expensive for younger companies who want to play in this space to grab market share. But it's starting to happen. In HR, I mean, the rise of JustWorks we launched 7 months ago. The rise of JustWorks has been spectacular. They're doing very well. They're very well liked. They pretty much came in and nailed user experience and just made it a more friendly platform to engage with. They do other things well too, but there was just no new, fresh company in this space. Zenefits had been around, but it doesn't have the excellent reputation for the interface. It also has, I don't know what paths you care to go down in this, but it also has had some pretty scathing news come out about it in recent months. But that's more from a insurance and I think fraud perspective, which is important. Right. But JustWorks has just really. It is in the process of displacing TriNet, at least among startups. So we study startups from seed stage up to like early Series B. Yeah. So another one would be accounting. So again, slow. Like we're not seeing as many new companies come about in the accounting world because it's so expensive and hard to pull people away from a standard like QuickBooks.
Right.
But Xero, Xero, it's New Zealand based. They've done well because a lot of us employ people, pay people, work with people around the world. And it's nice to kind of be able to work across currency, which they allow. And so Xero is making a dent, and FreshBooks is too. They were previously known for like tracking time management and invoicing. And so a lot of these giants are getting like seriously challenged. And as so many companies in the marketplace that are using these tools are run by kind of innovative, more entrepreneurially minded people, these are the people who are going to be quite willing to try new things, to not default to QuickBooks. And, we certainly at Stacklist want to be instrumental in helping them make those decisions when it's appropriate for them. Just because there's 10 times more information and 10 times more reviews about QuickBooks than anything else,
right? Well,
we might be in a good position to tell them, that's cool, but Bench or Xero might be a much better option for you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think a couple interesting things there. Yeah. One, for millennials, just don't seem to have the product loyalty, whatever you want to call it, but completely fine with switching. At my son's school, he's in high school, Instagram was blocked. Within 2 days, everyone was on Twitter, and everyone knew everybody else's Twitter account, and all the social groups were all back together, and everything was fine. Kind of crazy. Secondly, first mover advantage is nice, but you can't keep that for years and years and years. You need to continue to innovate. Even something, a long time workhorse like Salesforce, that interface is starting to look a little dated. Zendesk is doing
saying that for a while.
Yeah,
it's starting to look a little dated. Yeah, but sorry, go ahead. And Zendesk.
The Zendesk interface. So we were doing both customer service and sales out of Salesforce for a long time, and then Zendesk came along and we're like, wow, this is great. This is clean. We like interacting with customers and the interface all via email. So we switched the customer service side over to Zendesk, and even since we've been on there, they continue to change the interface and add features and do more things. So you can't take your first mover advantage and then just sit on it.
Yeah, absolutely. To play devil's advocate, there is, and I think like startups need to be conscious of this, and I mean, I think there's you have to have the awareness about these products as you go in, but like things that kind of counterbalance the need for continued innovation is, one, if the platform has very high switching costs, that can be very punishing. CRMs have very high switching costs. So, and obviously by switching costs, I'm referring to the time and the transition, the time it takes to transition your data over, and then the adoption / transition efforts of the team to kind of get adapted to something to be productive and back up to steady state on a new platform. Very hard with CRM.
Yep.
Pretty hard with accounting. Getting less hard with HR. And probably not so hard with marketing tools. I think email marketing maybe being the exception, because you often want to be able to look at data over time, and that gets hard to do when you switch platforms. So I think that's one of the kind of devilish aspects of Salesforce. And if you read any of the Salesforce reviews, and maybe I should just pull Salesforce, the link of our reviews into this chat session, but you'll find a lot of them that are like, we really wanted to try something new. We were really interested in, looking at Pipedrive or blah, 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 but there are a couple of factors. So like one, we just got too large. There was no CRM that could really manage our growing sales team as we raised our Series A or raised our Series B. The other one is like the more experienced salespeople only know Salesforce.
Sure.
And that's a really, these are things everyone has to take into account. So that's kind of the nature, like almost all these Salesforce reviews are like, we wanted to try something new. We didn't want to have to do Salesforce, but, so you're absolutely right. And that obviously is Salesforce. It's like a law of physics. It's going to have to innovate. It will get pummeled by someone else.
Yeah.
I think that one thing that's important to note is some of the more interesting CRM companies as of late have been really integrated with Google Apps. And that's really important. In fact, we made that decision for our CRM, which is less about sales for us and more about process, getting interviews kind of through the funnel and making sure that all of the data has been managed and everything. But we chose it because it was just easiest to integrate with Google Apps. And we did a pretty rich, we used our platform, we used reviews and stuff like that to make our decision. But another one is ProsperWorks. Now, in truth, we haven't seen as much mentioned about ProsperWorks, but they were very, received a lot of accolades from Google, the Google Apps community when they launched. So we haven't seen much of them, but Streak, I think Streak has been a little bit more lean in their rollout. They've been, that was our impression, but still, we did expect to see more of ProsperWorks. Yeah.
What do you think about the difference between integration and integrating with across platforms and across applications like a Slack versus a walled garden kind of app store, more like a Salesforce? What are just your thoughts on that, and what are you seeing that people are talking about?
It's really hard to become a walled garden. Salesforce is going to be able to pull it off a little bit. They're always going to have people developing on their platform, but given the proliferation of tools and really any category, given the low barrier to developing technology now, we have too much coming up. You have to assume you're playing in a pretty fragmented market in general.
Right.
So to build a walled garden, I mean, good luck. I think that's quite hard.
Right.
Slack has opened itself. I think one of the important things to note about Slack is that I'm just on my computer, is that, that's also part of its identity, and that's one of the reasons it's doing that, being available to the community. It's Slack is saying we're better because of our community. And I think that part and parcel of that is allowing a lot of development and integration. And there are a lot of companies out there that kind of do things like that. Zapier.
Yep.
I mean, that's the same with a Segment. Those are different companies, but they both work and they do very different things. But it is their nature to kind of bring these tools together. So it's not a perfect example of a walled garden or non-walled garden, but I think it does say something about the trend and the values of this community.
Yeah.
Also, when you consider, and again, this is the Stacklist audience, which is a startup audience and a startup kind of field of contributors. So, our community is going to behave differently than, a corporate community maybe. But I don't know how well generally people would respond to something that's so closed off. I don't know. That's that. I don't know. I don't know that it really comes up as much anymore because so few people are closing themselves to that kind of development.
Right. I think you're right. I think the big thing is, do you have the audience do you have enough subscribers that it makes sense for someone to go out and develop apps just for your platform? And not everyone has that. Plus, with the rise of Zaps and IFTTT, it's more.
If it's done that,
Yep. Which I love. I have a bunch of those that run all the time for me.
Those are great, especially when you're setting up a CRM. If you have to transition into a CRM, to a new CRM, use Zapier or use IFTTT because that can really save you.
Yeah. One more quick note, Angela. I'm writing here frantically as we're talking. I'm like, wait, this is all on Stacklist. So just for those of you at home, if you're taking notes frantically like I was, just it's all on Stacklist.com, and it's all by category and everything. It's a really, really amazing website. Did we kind of assume people know what Stacklist is?
Well,
Yeah, maybe give us the 30-second elevator pitch of Stacklist.
Yeah, so like I mentioned before, we kind of in the years I've been in startups, have noticed that so many people, whether it's at parties or on the phone or socially, just are saying, hey, by the way, we kind of are growing out of MailChimp. Have you guys explored anything else? Or what are you using? Or, hey, we just did a raise. We're going to do a lot of hiring. We've been hacking together payroll and HR. What are you guys using? And these are really where decisions get made. We tested that. We ran a survey against it, and it was true. So what we set out to do was create a place where founders could go and find out what other founders were using. So that created an area where you have, similar business situations, credible contributors. As I mentioned, all contributors come through 20 to 30-minute interviews. So it's very curated. We're selecting who should contribute, who would be, whose opinions kind of would be super valuable to other startups. We're in the process of kind of expanding on that. So we do want to start kind of speaking to heads of marketing, heads of finance, heads of HR at growing startups. But in this first half year, we've really been focused on founders. So we're basically, this is a massive community-wide documentation of the tools that everyone's using. So we kind of see ourselves as kind of a Gartner meets Angie's List. Really Angie's List on the front end, and but a lot of the work we're doing on the back end is more in the research company vein.
Interesting.
Oh, that's great. So Nicole asked us a question over here in the chat that I think is a great one. So she's asking, do you think startups view their phone system as a cloud app or something else? Or is there a trend that way to have phone service be an app?
Yeah. So let me just clarify. First of all, is my image, is everything looking okay on your end? Everything?
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to plug something in.
No, it's great.
Okay. So there are a couple ways to kind of think about that. First of all, I want to clarify. We have, as I said, certain categories we ask about, but we kind of in general do not have a notion to be prescriptive about what people consider an essential tool. So when we look at our future, we kind of envision this world where, a tool could be an event you attend every year, could be anything you really consider absolutely essential to doing business. And we think that there are really interesting kind of unknown unknowns out there if we are not too prescriptive about what is considered a tool. So that gives us some really interesting responses. We also talk a lot about internal communication. That is one of the kind of areas we ask, what people are, how people are solving internal communication. So phone systems will come up a lot. A lot of like audio, video and audio communication systems. So yeah, sometimes it's like Slack and GChat, but other times, we're talking about Skype and OnSIP, things like that. RingCentral comes up. So yeah, I mean, these solutions have been coming up since day one without our prompting them.
Cool.
And to expand on that just a little bit, I mean, some of these systems play out in marketing. So when it comes to like phone, specifically in messaging, so then you'll have a tool like Trello get mentioned. So right. We obviously don't ask at this point, hey, what are you using for your SMS marketing? But, we try to ask questions in such a way that it kind of surfaces those tools that people feel are essential.
Okay. So are you comfortable sharing the tools that you use as a business, or is that kind of like
it would be a
playing
damn shame if I we have like 400 founders who have like spent half an hour with us telling us everything they use. And that would be like so bad. Yeah, I'm happy to share what we use. Okay. So right now for our kind of more marketing sales operations, although we're not really in full sales mode, we have Streak, as I mentioned, which we're very happy with. And I'd say one of the reasons we like using earlier stage tools when possible is because you get such good customer service. People are they kind of want to help you and want to learn more about how people are using their tool. We do use Hootsuite for posting to social. For internal communication, we use Slack. We're still kind of finding our vibe. In the recent months, Slack has received a little bit more criticism than kind of the angelic reviews they had last year when they were a little bit newer, but they're still by far and away leading the way. So we do have a Stacklist for Stacklist, but some of the others that we're using, we use TriNet for HR for now. Why do we use TriNet? I feel like this is pretty important to note. There were a few exceptional situations, just like I had experience with TriNet. We had kind of good access to a lot of what they were offering. Pretty easy to get off the ground. They're a professional employment organization, so you get a lot of good perks if you're a smaller company. You get the perks of a larger company at a smaller company. So there was a little bit of a rush to do this at the time that we set up, and so just had to make the decision to go with something that was known, which is something that I don't think is an ideal situation, that you go into something in that kind of rush, but it's the reality that happens. Payroll is through TriNet as well. Accounting, we are leaving QuickBooks and deciding between Xero and FreshBooks.
Cool.
Email marketing, we do use MailChimp. I'm actually a huge fan of MailChimp. That is a giant in its category. One of the things I always feel like mentioning with MailChimp, it has a lot of functionality that people actually don't quite understand that it has. So we have a lot of people talk about how, MailChimp doesn't do transactional emails. And it does not do transactional emails in a way a lot of other companies do. I mean, there are other companies that have a completely different framework around how they do email marketing. SendGrid more so, Sailthrough, things like that, more kind of campaign-based, long-term marketing through email. But MailChimp, I see a lot of companies, many will come to us and say, hey, MailChimp just doesn't have some of the transactional. I think we lost Angela.
Nope. She'll be back.
Okay. It actually has a lot of transactional features that allow you to proxy much more than I think people understand. I think MailChimp did a poor job launching this particular part of their platform. I think it launched about a year and a half ago. But I would really challenge most people who think they need to leave MailChimp to really look harder. And I would say also we get a lot of people saying they need something new in a certain marketing area, like they need something that will do X, Y, or Z. And it's often very feature focused. I'm never quite sure how problem focused or opportunity focused it is. Like, what problem are you trying to solve by doing this? People just get very fixated on a certain feature that's missing, which is probably missing, but it's not really coming from the right place.
Yeah.
And I think that goes to something that we advise a lot of people, which is like, when you get upset or when you're bothered by something that's missing from a platform, live with it for a week. Is it still an issue? Is it really preventing your company from moving forward on a certain issue? Or live with it for a month. It's also one way to look at a tech pipeline. You look at an issue on the site, you're like, oh my God, that looks awful. Let me ask our developer to please change that. And really, there's a lot of important stuff going on. So is it really that important that it displaces everything else? So it's the same kind of thinking.
Yeah. Yeah. I was testing a new phone, and from one of our big vendors, and the very first day I'm like, all the buttons are different. Like, all right, I'm gonna stick with it. And then a month later, then I was used to where everything was, and there were still some features that I wanted, but it's got these features over here that are great that my old phone didn't have, but it's missing a few things here. But you've got to live with it a little while. You're used to one thing, and that those switching costs and just the comfort that you have with that first platform.
Yeah.
That's a big part of it. I heard a review recently of Slack, and somebody said it was Slack is the day-long company-wide meeting that has no agenda. Like, yeah, there's kind of something to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that in fairness, couldn't that be said of almost any, most kind of chats? I think that Slack kind of has more of a proactive, like kind of promotes the conversation. You know, I think people feel they need to be constantly on it, maybe slightly more than others. It kind of has this inviting nature. But yeah, no, and Slack is being used in all sorts of interesting ways. I was just thinking, I don't know if you've heard of the company Common. It's a co-living space. It's community-driven co-living space. Several locations in New York City and growing to new cities soon. So they have, you know, homes with, you know, 20 plus people living in them. And so like these homes use Slack, you know, people within the homes use Slack to, you know, communicate with each other. They're coming home and, you know, can someone get a bottle of wine because everyone's gathering and they ran out of rosé. So it's just, you know, or probably more substantive stuff than that, but wait, hey,
probably not.
What is more substantive than that? What am I talking about? So, no, Slack is, I mean, it's got a vast footprint as far as users go. It's got a vast footprint as far as use cases go, and it's getting vaster.
Love it.
That's a great word. Awesome.
Angela, you're back.
Great. I am. Yeah. Sorry about that. I could still hear you and see you. I don't know. I had to refresh, but I'm back. So, but with that, I think I'm going to let you guys get to the after show here. I know we're a little bit over time, but Amanda, Mike likes to hang out with our guests a little bit after I hang up, and you guys can continue the chat. But it was so lovely meeting you, and I'm super excited to go through your site in more depth, and because we're heavy tools driven company, and really interested to see like what more you have on there. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Great.
Yeah, you bet. All right, Mike, and we'll be back online in a couple of weeks. We'll announce to the audience when our next Blab is, and so stay tuned, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, Angela.
Bye.
All right. Bye, guys.
Great. All right. So thank you so much. So Angela's gone. We're still recording, and people are still hanging out with us. But I'd just like to. I always have just a couple questions afterwards that we never get to do during the main thing. It's just kind of casual,
like Oprah.
kind of like Oprah.
Yeah.
So first, I'm having a tough time placing your accent. Where are you from originally?
I'm from North Carolina.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because you don't have a Southern accent, but you slipped y'all in there, and it was very comfortable. I'm like, okay, this is Southern somewhere, but I don't know where.
It's such a complicated relationship with this word, and I think a lot of people do. It's a really convenient word, first of all. I'm not sure what else to say about it except for I tried to. So I went when I went to college. I went to college in New England, and I got there, and I was this Southern girl, and I grew up in a pretty red, at the time, like, I grew up not in a city. And I just felt very conscious of my accent in college. And so I started saying you all. And but I said it wrong. I think I said it wrong. Right. And I just said, I brought so much attention to myself when I would say, when you all do this. And then like one person, I remember my roommate said that I sounded really funny when I said that. And why did I say that? Which struck me as an odd question because it seemed grammatically correct. Then another person said, hey, in English, the second person plural is also just you. And so you can just say you and not you all. So it was just this whole conversation. So
where'd you go to school?
Went to Brown.
Okay. So I had the exact same experience, came from the Midwest, went to school in New England. I went to Harvard, and the same that my roommates were giving me the toughest time on about half of my vocabulary, either the wrong words or the wrong pronunciation. So I worked very, very hard to try to get rid of most of the Indiana accent. I'm going back home the end of May for Memorial Day. It's the 100th running of the Indy 500, so I'm very excited.
Are you a race fan in general? Do you do NASCAR or?
I know all the drivers. I just don't. I don't watch a lot of TV. I don't watch a lot of sports in general. If something's on, a football game is on or something, I'll watch it. I'll definitely watch the Indy 500 every year. I watch the Brickyard 400, the NASCAR race there at Indy every year. But that's about the extent of it. I just don't. The kids and ONSIP and everything else, there's just not a lot of time to do that. How about? North Carolina is big NASCAR country.
Yeah, so one of the reasons my parents moved to where I'm from was to be near Charlotte Motor Speedway.
You're kidding? Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. So I grew up in Speedway, Indiana, which is the town around the Indy 500, around the track.
Yeah.
So yeah,
now Lowe's Motor Speedway. But
right, but yeah, no one calls it that, so it's okay. I love Stacklist. I think it's such a great idea. Are you thinking about doing the same thing for any other industries? And so that's most. Yeah,
we're totally thinking about that.
Good.
Yeah, we kind of want to nail a few more things about what we're doing as startups. So one of the great things about starting where we're starting is, first of all, it's known, right? I mean, we all have, the people on our team are kind of have some experience here. We understand what's needed in startups. We know kind of, so that was important, but more importantly is almost like we see a broad array of, startups in different industries and whatnot, but we're looking at a certain phase of the company. So we do get kind of a good view of what's going on. We have more restaurants coming in as startups to Stacklist. Okay. So yeah, okay. I mean, so we see a broad swath of industries. So yeah, we probably have 6 more months of really solidifying a lot of our data capture process. So we're gonna, at some point, probably gonna need to, we will be moving past just the interview format. We think it's hugely important to have that kind of foundation to most of the conversations with these companies. Right. We have deliberately stayed away from a very simplistic star system or rating system. Right. We haven't even started using that promoter score. That said, so we think, we get such depth. People tell us just really helpful things, not just, it was great or it was awful. They'll say like, this was the use case, or this is when this is when one tool stopped being useful to us, so we went out and adopted another one. We have all of that. So when somebody wants to go look at what fintech companies are using, because they're a fintech startup, they start to get a lot of insights about what was working for people that look like them. Yeah. So getting the research down and continuing to get the kind of richness and engagement from startups is hugely important to us. We have some plans to continue to do that without relying solely on interviews. And also with kind of the data presentation. And I'm using that loosely as just like the front end. Because to us, everything is pretty much data. It's how are we presenting the data to people to make it easy for them to make these decisions. So there are a few things about that data presentation that are important for us to nail. One is our data, we have 6,000 reviews.
Wow.
So qualitative data is, by many accounts, like the best kind of data. But what we're now working on is we have a data scientist, working to kind of extract, capture the essence of each tool review, or how people feel about each tool. So we're basically deriving in a way a star system, but we didn't want to lead with that kind of simplicity. So yeah, and then sentiment analysis is basically what we're using to get there. So surfacing that data, and I think like UX and stuff is still something that's, we're really working on, and it's just hard to do. Learning exactly what people are looking for when they come to the site and how they're looking is still we're working on that. Right now, what we're just trying to do is get reviews as quickly as possible from interviews onto the site, and hoping people can find what they need when they're trying to research a tool. But I think nailing some of those processes, we'll I think this could be very replicable in other industries.
Interesting. Yeah. One last thing, I've looked everywhere. I've looked at your other interviews. And if you want to kick this question down the road, that's fine. What's the revenue model?
Well, right now we're starting to do sponsorships. So there are a few. Some of the other models that we've kind of considered have been more affiliate. But the truth of the matter, we've also considered subscription, which I'm happy to speak to, but we are not going to go down that road right now. But doing sponsorship basically because people are coming to our site, spending a lot of time on the site and using it as part of the pathway to make their decisions. And given the caliber of people contributing their reviews, if somebody clicks away from our site or is kind of mulling over which CRM to use, and they see Mike at OnSIP is using, I forget what your CRM is.
CRM is going to be Zendesk.
Oh, okay. So you use Zendesk for all of your, okay. That's usually useful. Like the last thing they heard about Zendesk, or like, you gave an amazing review of Zendesk, or, or in some horrible review of another site. It came from you. It came from someone who's trustworthy. What the success of your company, or because you've done, or what OnSIP is so highly relevant to the use case they're looking at. So for many reasons, it's just these are very powerful reviews. So sponsorship is right now kind of where we're leaning, but we are trying to structure it so that people we work with are contributing helpful information that gets our users to people to the decision, to the information to make the right decision.
Great. Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. Do you have any questions? Do you have any?
Well, I have a few. I would say we try to tell everyone that if you're a founder of a company right now, we would invite you to do a Stacklist interview. You can sign up on our homepage. There's a banner.
They're lots of fun, and your people are really knowledgeable, and they pull a lot of the little details out. They're really great, really, really great.
Thank you. I will pass that along. That is that's hugely important to us. So we are right now, if a company is under 75 people, we are focusing on interviewing founders. Mid to late summer, we're going to start asking to interview many more people at the companies, people who run marketing, people who run accounting, things like that. So we want to get much more topic specific pretty soon. And we always invite feedback. My email is amanda@stacklist.com, or you can email info@. We're pretty accessible.
That's great. That's great. Because it's a good point. As a founder, you know what accounting's using, you know what marketing's using, but you don't necessarily know all the ins and outs of each little each little piece. So that's a good point. That's a good point. Yeah, Nicole would definitely have a much more in-depth feel for the social marketing and the email marketing and so forth. So.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
That's absolutely the direction we're headed. I see that being much more of the long-term kind of contribution. I think that those are where the hugely valuable and hugely relevant insights will certainly be coming from.
So if you're a startup, if you're anywhere in that spectrum, Stacklist.com and sign up for an interview. And or just check out the site to see what tools you can or should be using. It's really great. I go in there about once a month just to see what's new and exciting. So, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. That was great. This is probably the best Blab session we've had. I had a lot of fun today.
Oh, wow.
So
wow. Well, thank you. Yeah. It's the best Blab session I've ever had.
Excellent. Great.
All right. Well, thank you again. And this was great.
All right. Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye.